Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc's Ferrari heads to Miami, the sixth round of the 2025 Formula One Championship, carrying with it the awareness of those who know their own limits. On one hand, this is a good thing, as it allows maximum focus to get the best out of oneself. On the other, having limitations at an intrinsic level risks draining some energy. That said, this doesn't seem to be the case within the minds of the drivers, technicians, and engineers. Dealing with this feeling is extremely difficult. Charles Leclerc has been living in this state for several seasons now, and who knows how the Monegasque truly feels, knowing that if he had the steering wheel of a competitive car in his hands, things would be very different. The Ferrari driver's comments in the press conference in the lead-up to the American weekend reflect exactly this state of mind, because regardless of whether a track is favorable or not, when the performance of the single-seater isn't there, the result is always the same. Luckily, his tenacity seems to never run out. The 27-year-old driver shows it on track times and times again, fighting with his car before even thinking about his opponents. And this is the biggest issue of all, because when you always have to push the limits of nature, go all out to drive your car well, and then realize that despite everything, all that work might only earn you a distant third place. Well, it's rather frustrating. The McLaren MCL 39 cars are far too ahead, and the Max Verstappen Red Bull duo, when everything aligns and they optimize performance, makes the RB21 unbeatable for the prancing horse. The same goes for George Russell's Mercedes W16, which is a car that's far from perfect, but often still faster than the SF25. Draining. That's the adjective that perfectly captures the psychotechnical state the Monegasque Ferrari driver has been living in since signing with the team. There's nothing worse in life than wasted talent. Thinking that Charles Leclerc might get fed up and let others take his place wouldn't be so far-fetched. Yet Charles has always denied any rumor linking him to other teams, and Ferrari must hope that never changes. We are talking about a love that's eternal, but so far impossible. Above all, it is quite sad to think that practically half of his career has flown by this way. Far too few satisfactions and many, many disappointments. The Italian team needs to wake up, and it needs to do so immediately. Enough with the endless, pointless talk, which is about as useful as a €3 coin. The first part of the 2025 Formula One season has gone very poorly, especially considering the expectations the Maranello team had before the start of the championship. That we must try to improve that Charles Leclerc repeats endlessly shows his commitment, even though the blame is not his. And it is a real shame that his extreme dedication and the difference he often manages to make on track unfortunately isn't enough, because the car is not up to the task and never has been. Ferrari's approach doesn't work. Too many smiling faces, starting with team principal Frédéric Vasseur, who perhaps still has not realized where he is. The French manager didn't come to Maranello to sweep the sea. There is no sign of the urgency of someone who wants to get back to the top. Disconnected and completely absent leadership, this is how we can describe the Ferrari management. What's more, you never see in the eyes of those in charge the bitterness of always achieving the same result, losing. If your name is Ferrari, having come close to only 3 titles in 16 years, namely in 2010 and 2012 in the Drivers' Championship, last year in the Constructors, is rather deplorable, if not downright shameful. Ownership doesn't even seem worried, judging by the leadership. We are talking about John Elkann, who seems completely detached from Formula One, an absent president. It almost feels like he's saying, "Don't like me? Feel free to join the line of fools waiting for me to care." In this way, you never win. For Miami, we can maybe expect another piece of qualifying magic from Charles Leclerc, and then, after a fuel-heavy war on track, if everything goes perfectly and the others mess up, a third place on the podium that, of course, brings no pride, only anger. On the other hand, there is a stark contrast in morale between the two sides of the Ferrari garage. Charles Leclerc arrives at the 6th round of the championship after the strong performance in Jeddah, which earned the Maranello team its first podium of the season. The Monegasque, despite the challenges plaguing the SF25, has found an alternative solution to extract the maximum potential from the car while waiting for the updates to make the car more competitive. Lewis Hamilton arrives in Miami with a very different spirit. More than the lackluster results and the few points collected in the first 5 Grands Prix of the season, the real concern is the failure to find a compromise setup that can enhance Lewis Hamilton's driving style. The weekend in Saudi Arabia was emblematic in this sense, marked by a performance depression. While in the first 4 rounds of the 2025 Formula One season, the Briton showed flashes of competitiveness even within the same race. On the ultra-fast Jeddah track, he was soundly beaten by his teammate. The feeling is that the 7-time Formula One world champion has not been able to find a solid baseline, a consistent platform on which to adjust the SF25 setup to suit both the driver's needs and the track characteristics. It's a déjà vu of what happened at Mercedes when ground effect cars returned. On many weekends, the engineers assigned to Lewis Hamilton's Silver Arrow operated through trial and error instead of developing the setup from a basic configuration. Jeddah is a revealing track in this respect. Lewis Hamilton was the pole sitter and winner of the inaugural GP edition there, after one of his many all-out battles with Max Verstappen. The following year, the first with the current technical regulations, he was sensationally eliminated in Q1. At the time, the talk was of a setup that made the Mercedes W13 undrivable. On several occasions over the past 3 years, the British driver has raced in no man's land. If with a new team, he still faces the same difficulties he already experienced, it's fair to ask some questions, perhaps unpopular, but at the same time, plausible. In the ground effect era, Lewis Hamilton has never driven the best car on the grid, except in particular circumstances, such as Las Vegas or the Spa-Francorchamps circuit last season. In hindsight, his teammates, namely George Russell and Charles Leclerc, despite the poor competitiveness of the cars, have shown better performance than the Stevenage-born driver. 4 years into stable regulations, we wonder if this generation of cars is truly incompatible with Lewis's driving style. A discomfort known at Brackley, as explained by Andrew Shovlin, Mercedes' trackside engineering director. The Englishman's driving style has always been characterized by heavy braking followed by sharp cornering, a technique known as V-ing. Current cars do not enhance this approach, as they are heavy and prone to understeer. This makes it impossible to carry maximum speed through the apex. When the car allowed it, he managed to compensate with his talent for the difficulty in optimizing his strength. On the contrary, with more difficult cars, the handicap has become too disruptive to overall performance. In this context, the work of the Maranello engineers and technicians is understandably tough, as there are many factors to consider in defining the setup. First, they must establish a platform suited to the circuit's characteristics. On track, the setup must be refined to address the current issues of the 677 project, and finally, compromises must be found to make the car more comfortable for Lewis Hamilton to drive. In the second sprint race of the 2025 Formula One season, we will see how far the mutual understanding between Ferrari and the British champion has come. Hopefully, the process will be quick enough not to waste what, at least in theory, was supposed to mark the rebirth of the 7-time F1 world champion. We await the next 2 days on track at the Miami International Autodrome in Florida to learn more.